This is Jeff Dawson, another episode of Jeff Dawson and Topics of Interest. This podcast is on Anchor FM, and you can also hear it on Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify. Today I'm going to talk about this series of books that I wrote. The first one is Gateway Pioche. The second one is Destination DC. The third one is Target Berlin. Larry Welch, a gentleman I met when I was doing state work for a contractor, had an idea for a story, and he approached me back in 2012 or 2011, pitched me the idea, and I sat down and decided, well, I'll give it a shot. That book was only supposed to be one. It turned into three. Now, back in 2012, 2013, I really didn't spend a lot of time watching the news because there was more important issues. I have family, I was recovering from back surgery, things of that nature. The back surgery was definitely the biggest one. So I wrote this series really not thinking about what it was all about and how it would turn out. The premise is you have 4 kids from Stanford, they graduate, they get double masters, they want to take a trip across the United States before they have to get a real job and then have to schedule their vacations. They wind up going to Vegas. They win $100,000 at the Hard Rock. The mob operation that owns the Hard Rock really wasn't happy with that and they wanted their money back. This ensues in a rather exciting chase scene in the first book, Gateway Pioche. And they wind up at this abandoned government facility that has a time travel machine in it. And our 4 students, Larry, Judith, Mookie, and Abdul, all get to go back in time to see certain events they were interested in. Larry wants to see if we landed on the moon or if it was staged or was a combination of the two in 1969. Mookie was always fascinated with the JFK assassination. She gets to go back and see that. Abdul was very interested, even though he's a Hindu, in Christianity and what happened to Christ during the lead up to his crucifixion. But he was really focused and interested in what happens to Judas. So he gets to go back and he sees them in the Garden of Gethsemane. And then he follows Judas, because if you follow the Bible and believe the Bible, Judas hung himself for 30 pieces of silver. He gets to go see this. Now, Judith, she has ties, which none of us would really want, for genealogy to the Third Reich. Her great-grandfather is Martin Bormann. She doesn't want to go back and see what happened because she's read the books, she's heard the history, and it weighs heavily on her all through her life. She wants to go back and kill Martin Bormann and be able to cut that tie with her past. Well, as the book progresses, what you start finding out is that the Fourth Reich is coming to power in the United States government. Does this sound familiar in today's climate and culture? And it's true. After the fall of Nazi Germany, as far as technology went, we did recover some of the weapons, but what was really a sought-after item were the scientists. And the Allies, French, Canadian, British, Americans, that was the prized possession. The Russians realized it too. course, they stripped all the factories they came across with, excuse me, and shipped that technology back home to see if they could reproduce it. Well, this is what the kids stumble upon, because this time machine, the whole premise behind it was to go back and change some things in history that would make it easier for the Fourth Reich to come to power. And you get to see this in Book 2 and Book 3, where it's really coming to a head. The Germans' last real wicked fighter that they developed was called the Go 229. And like its predecessor, the ME 262, if either one of these weapons would have gone into mass production, our air forces, whether it was the RAF or the 8th Air Force, they would have been decimated. The 262 was ready for production in 1942, but Adolf Hitler wanted a fighter bomber, and it was actually one thing that Goering and Udet and Yashonik all were against. They said that's not what it was designed for. It needs to be a fighter. If we build it now, we can eliminate the enemy. Well, they didn't, lucky for us. And they do develop the Go 229 in this book. And it's really a wicked machine. I mean, the book cover for Target Berlin is just really cool. Bobby Lee Hunt Healy is my illustrator, and she really grasped the concept of all three of the books in the series. Well, in the series, as we start to find out what is going on in the government, I didn't realize it until about a week ago. I know I'm not supposed to touch my nose, but when it itches, it itches. That the agents of the Fourth Reich have also gotten into the press. And I'm going to read some of the excerpts from these books, and then you make your own determination. This first one is from Destination DC. Director Rayburn, I'm sure you're aware of the issue the other night and the untimely demise of General McCulloch and his family. I am. A little background. In the end of the first book, Judith uses the time machine to go back to see General McCulloch, and she gives him a list of all the subversives that are in the United States government. This list was provided to her by Dr. Leonid Scorzanzi, who was running this time machine facility in Pioche, Nevada, was part of the underground organization that was attempting to overthrow the United States. This is why McCulloch was killed, because he now knows, and he told the wrong people about it, thus he's dead. Robert Rayburn, 55, 6'2", physically fit, had been the director of the FBI for over 20 years. His appointments and rise through the ranks was compared to the ascension of LBJ. Those who stood in his way disappeared. Despite being a bureaucrat, his methods were more vicious than Hoover's. He was ruthless and concise. He personally led the roundup of the most notorious Islamic terrorists on U.S. soil, the Scepters of Light. They swore death to America and all Western nations. Rayburn leaked the story to the press. The group was linked to a rash of bank robberies across the country where 5 civilians and 8 guards were killed. The radicals were accused of absconding with over $10 million. CCCN splashed the news all over the airwaves. Outrage was instilled in every God-fearing red, white, and blue American. So when he reported the organization was eliminated with no survivors, the press and the public cheered with pride at a job well done. What they didn't know was it was a massacre. Rayborn and his men surrounded the mosque, fired tear gas canisters during prayer time, then went in and shot every living soul inside. There were no survivors. So you think there might have been a little spin on that story? Then you also know how failure is dealt with. I am. Now that was Rayburn's boss, Blucher. Good, then we shall proceed forward, hopefully with no more unforeseen circumstances. Yes, I see none on the horizon. The press is under our control. I have them begging for leaks on a daily basis. With them chasing ghosts, we shall not be disturbed, and if one gets wise, they'll die. Excellent. Now tell me about the final preparations. The new device is in place. McCullough was right. It only needed a minor tweak. Excellent. Now tell me about the results in Kansas. Unfortunately, I have no information yet. A small bead of perspiration formed on his brow. The news infuriated Blucher. Need I remind you how important it is I know the results, Mr. Rayborn? Gerhard watched his Adam's apple take an uncomfortable gulp. No, sir. I remind you how important it is. Need I remind you how important it is? All right, I said. No, sir. However, it appears Team Razor 3 was destroyed during the test. I dispatched the backup team in Topeka to the site. I should know something in less than 2 hours, 3 tops. See to it. They have perfected the technology from the time travel machine into a weapon that is unbelievably devastating. Think Star Trek, the old Star Trek, not the new ones and all the blah, 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 but even the first remake that J.J. Abrams did was absolutely phenomenal. This weapon, when fired, disintegrates everything it touches. And it can be very meticulous in its target grid. You set up the grid, the beam will hit that grid. There's no debris, there's no rubble. The only thing that's left is a material that rivals glass. That's it. So if you happen to be an unlucky nominee to take part in one of these tests, you just turn to glass. There's nothing. It's just ash. Like, think of a body being cremated. There's nothing there. But what this segment of the book really focused on was they have control of the press. You see any correlations with that versus what we see on a daily basis from MSNBC, Fox, CBS, ABC? Just go through the list of the news agencies. It's not news anymore, and it's an opinion race, and they're all called shows. Shows are entertainment. Serious news to me is not entertainment. And I don't want to get off track because it's so easy when I start talking about this. I am not a news junkie, but I do stay informed, I do keep abreast, and I do piss a lot of people off, whether it's on the right or whether it's on the left. If they post a story, I will fact check it. If it's wrong, I will tell them it's wrong. Then they'll get pissed off at me. And this is both sides of the aisle. And this is a real problem we have in America. You have Twitter, you have Facebook. They have created the knee-jerkpedia generation. Who needs to check facts? Who needs to vet a story? Who needs to take 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds of their time to look at a post and say, well, that's just a bunch of bullshit. There ain't no way that can be true. But will they research it? Will they verify it? No. They'll like it, and let's just say half of them will copy and share, paste and share. It doesn't matter if it has substance. It doesn't matter if it's not true, but it fits their current narrative. That isn't news. That's not even a show. That's not even entertainment. It's bullshit. What is entertainment is this excerpt I read from my book, Destination DC. When I first wrote this, I was in a writer's group. And our assignment each week was, if you've written something, bring it and we'll read it. And the group would critique it. And I will be honest, a lot of the liberal writers in the group didn't always appreciate my critique. Well, neither did the conservative writers, because I could distance myself from the politics, from whatever they believe politically, any of that stuff. I'm reading their story and I am critiquing it. That's it. We're done. We move on. And yes, I ruffled some feathers. So when I read this excerpt 7 years ago, a couple of the guys raised their eyebrows like, where is this going? Well, I'll tell you where it's going. It's going into the third book of Target Berlin, where the infection of the Fourth Reich is completely out of control. They are on the verge of overthrowing our government. I mean, on the verge. You have assassinations going on. People are dying left and right. They don't know why. Certain groups are being targeted for extermination because they have an idea that there's something wrong in the Beltway, but they're not exactly sure what. Now, the four characters I mentioned earlier, they do know what's going on. They've seen the paperwork. They met some of the leaders, and their whole mission is to get to the White House and stop it before it's too late. It doesn't mean all of them make it to the White House, because that would be too much of a storybook ending. So some of the characters, things don't go too well for them. And it really is a cool series. I never thought in my life I would write something like this, but I sure had a hell of a good time doing it. So I could read some other excerpts from it, but altogether it's like 5 pages. So I'm going to skip that and get down to the nitty-gritty. And if you want to make a correlation with today's political environment and turmoil and chaos that's going on, that's your choice. I'm not here to influence you. I'm just going to read to you what I wrote back in 2013 when I was having fun writing. So this is from the third book, Target Berlin. And it really did get, to get to this point, it's really exciting. And there are more twists and turns than you can shake a stick at. White House press room. Interim Speaker of the House, Lori Newton, stepped up to the podium. Settle down, people, settle down. All of your questions will be answered once the president finishes his address. Before she could say a word, the reporters crashed her with, "What happened to Clark? Who's running the country? Did Taylor know of the plot? What are your qualifications to be speaker? Is there another political ploy for a power play? Why are there armed guards in the room?" She never wavered with the assault. The one question she heard loud and clear was, "What are your qualifications to be Speaker of the House?" It was simple math when one broke it down. Despite being a junior representative, she was one of the few left standing, but it was more than that. I'll answer the question. She looked to her left as the crowd calmed down. "Because I trust her. Unlike many of you in this room, she shoots from the hip and doesn't muddy the water with boring, lofty rhetoric we've become too accustomed to hearing." Lori didn't think twice as he entered the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States." "Thank you, Speaker Newton." He glanced about the room as reporters and cameras pointed lenses and microphones his way. It was the first press conference where he felt each device was a weapon preparing to bring him down. He approached the podium flanked by two Marines. But before I go on, yes, the president appointed her Speaker of the House. Why? Well, you'll have to read the books to find out just how many people are left standing in the United States Congress. "Thank you, Speaker Newton." He glanced about the room as reporters and cameras pointed lenses and microphones his way. I know I'm repeating myself. It was the first press conference where he felt each device was a weapon preparing to bring him down. He approached the podium flanked by two Marines. Ooh, there's something new. He's got two Marines with him. What the hell would that be about? "I have a brief statement to make, and then I'll answer any and all questions. First, the Pentagon and Washington Monument were not struck by a meteorite. They were destroyed by a magnetic resonance weapon in the lower basements of the Pentagon. The weapon was designed by Professors Leonid Scorzanzi, who I mentioned, and Gerhard Blücher, who I just recently mentioned. Its sole purpose was to eliminate the current government and replace it with a Fourth Reich. The accidents in Kansas, Blackwater Falls, and Atlantic City were not accidents. They were targets of the rogue group. Senator Washburn did not die of a heart attack or stroke. He was summarily shot for treason against the United States." Yeah, he was kind of surprised when that happened to him. Sounds of gasps ripped through the reporter's pool. All the missing members from Congress and the Pentagon who perished in the blast were found out to be sympathizers with the coup. I've heard from the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It is my understanding that they too have identified a group as sympathizers. Yeah, what you don't realize is that London and Moscow are targets in this third book, Target Berlin. He will be addressing the issue tomorrow. I and Vice President Andrews are running the government to the best of our abilities. We have been in touch with all the governors of each state and are working on having new elections for the vacant seats. Any man or woman wanting to run for office will endure a grueling interrogation before being allowed to fill out an application. Yeah, there's no vetting process in this book. The government has been attacked. A coup was on the surface. So I know today's word is vetting. No, because of everything that has been uncovered and all the corruption in the government. You want to run for office? You're going to go through one hell of a background interrogation. In regards to the question asked about the current Speaker of the House, Miss Lori Newman, I appointed her because I trust her and she's a personal friend with unquestionable qualifications and references. He stepped back, taking a drink of water. Why are there armed guards in the room? Because over a dozen of you have been identified as collaborators with a defunct organization. Major McMillan, do the honors. Ooh, wouldn't that stir some shit up in today's world? Yes, sir. When I call your name, you will stand up. McKelly, Ransford, Simmons, Daly, Wallace, Reuter, Allison, Sloan, Fernandez, and Rodriguez. No one stood up. The major moved from behind the podium and approached the pool. People, we know who you are. You can stand up and face your judgment peacefully, or we will use force. One by one, the accused stood up. All but one. Cecilia Rodriguez wasn't going to go quietly. She leaned down, rummaging in her purse, removed a .38 caliber pistol, stood up and raised the pistol towards the president. She died instantly from the bullet fired by a Marine, entered her skull, imploding it. Those standing near her were showered with brain, bone, and blood. Well, that's a press conference you're not going to forget anytime soon, is it? Taylor never wavered. He took his place back at the podium. You nine have been found guilty of crimes against the United States government. You have been sentenced to death. Major, escort them out. The room exploded with catcalls and cries of injustice. Two M16s silenced the crowd as the soldiers fired a volley into the ceiling. Major, escort them out now. Yes, sir. Oh, there'd be another exciting scene, wouldn't it? Think that'd get the reporter's attention? He looked back at the shaken assembly. Are there any questions? He paused as no hands or calls came his way. Before you ask any irrelevant questions, that's pretty well hits home to today. Think real hard about the consequences. Playtime is over. The days of political posturing vaporized 2 weeks ago at the Pentagon. It's time to turn the country back over to the people and let them know they will no longer be the silent majority. They will be the vocal majority. The new government will work for the people and not their own self-serving interests. What a phenomenal novel idea! Damn, isn't that what the founders had in the Declaration of Independence and Constitution? The days of special interest groups influencing Congress are over. No longer will Congress pass useless legislation that provides the facade that they are working. Well, another shocking revelation. It will become an honor and a job. When you come to Washington, you will roll up your sleeves and prepare to work for the common good of the country and not the individual. For too long, 554 men and women have decided the fate of over 300 million. We're going to put the law back in the courts and eliminate judges who believe they are above the law. Supreme Court justices will not be lifelong appointments. They will be replaced at age 65. No exceptions. And I am an ardent fan of that. This lifelong appointment is just insane. Some of my lawyer friends don't like that, but everybody's got to retire at some time. I don't care how good your faculties are. They do start wavering a little. You do need fresh blood. You do need people who can stay awake during sessions. I think it's a phenomenal idea. Military contracts will no longer become a black hole. When a project is put out for bid, it will be built for the agreed amount, not a penny more. The days of wasteful spending are done. I am a definite advocate of that since I'm in construction. By God, how often do we hear about whether it's McDonnell Douglas or Boeing or somebody getting a government contract and you have cost overruns and cost overruns? Damn, I have done state jobs. I have done government jobs. You give them a price, that's the price. It's not this escalating scale of, oh, well, we didn't know it was going to take too damn long. Well, in my business, if it takes too damn long, we get penalized. We don't get rewarded. We are not given tens and tens of millions of more dollars to finish the project. We get fined, depending on the size of the job, anywhere from $500 to $50,000 a day for late completion. And then if we give the state or the owner a bad job, well, we've got to fix it until they're satisfied. So, okay, enough of that. Employees of the government are no longer immune from being fired or replaced. Hallelujah. You're damn right. This civil service crap of, well, you can't fire me because I'm a civil servant. Are you doing your job? No. Well, then your ass is canned. Got it? This is not a lifelong employment. Good God. Talk about something that needs to be changed. It is time to run the country like a business. It is time for full accountability on all fronts. He stepped back, watching the shocked crowd scribble frantic notes on their pads. He took another drink. Are there any questions of importance and relevance to what I've said? A lone hand shot up. Yes. Don Johnson with the Washington Post. Are we to understand the United States is now a police state? Taylor reached into his coat pocket, removing a piece of paper. His eyes scanned the names. No, Mr. Johnson, we're bringing law and order back to our country. Huh. Sound like Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis? Now you decide. And how will you do that? Can we expect stormtroopers? Damn, there's a term that's popped up in the news lately. To visit us in the wee hours of the morning and be whisked off to the FEMA camps? Mr. Johnson, you failed to add "sir" to the end of your question. Before I answer, I have a question for you. As a student at Harvard, is it not true you are a member of the Freedom Fighters for All, a group known to sympathize with anti-Semitic activities? Is it not true you took part in rallies to evict Jews from the campus? Is it not also true that you not only attend underground KKK meetings, but are a card-carrying member? I believe you're avoiding my question, sir, Johnson fired back. No, sir. I'm addressing the question. How your name didn't make the list, I do not know, but the people who just died were ardent members of the aforementioned organizations. Would you like to join them? Shocking. He sat down. Any other questions? Mr. President, Steve Rutledge, Tulsa Tribune. When will the elections take place? As I stated earlier, we are talking to the governors of each state on the process. Mr. President, Ian McClary, Boston Globe. What will happen to our colleagues who were just arrested? They will be shot today for treason. Not much of a follow-up question after that response is there? Mr. President, Ruth Truman, Connecticut Chronicle. With the demise of the majority of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's running the military? Admiral Cockayne and his staff are handling these duties. In the coming weeks, there will be more appointments after a thorough background check is performed on each candidate. Yes, even the Pentagon and the military were infected with members of the Fourth Reich in this attempted coup. So the president is doing everything he can to try and rewrite this country and get it back on track, which is not going to happen overnight. He took a long drink of water, then bowed his head. His tone became somber. Back up. Mr. President, Aaron Walden, Austin News. Has the threat been completely neutralized, or are there other members not accounted for? He took a long drink of water, then bowed his head. His tone became somber. Mr. Walden, I wish I could answer that question. I pray to God Almighty that is the case. Then paused. People, it has been a trying 2 weeks, and there is much work to do in the coming months. I'm tired and need some rest. We will call another press conference in a week or two. Thank you for coming. It was the first time in the history of presidential press conferences where, as he exited, the pool didn't pepper him with more questions. They stood in silence as he left the room. What did you think about that? When I wrote this, it wasn't intended to be political. I am a conservative, but it wasn't intended to be political. And as I go back and reread it, I understand we need a free press in this country. That's a given. What we don't need is an opinion press. I understand newspapers are going to have op-eds. News stations used to occasionally have an op-ed, or you had the shows on Sunday morning. I think it was Crossfire, where you had the conservatives and you had the liberals, and they go back and forth and fight. In fact, you actually see a little snippet of that in the first Independence Day movie, where they have this two panelists, and I forgot the moderator's name. Well, do you think the president's decisions are foolhardy or brave? I forgot that guy's name. I have to look it up. And of course, the two commentators gave their bullshit opinion and their useless 2 cents worth. And that's all we're getting today. I'm not saying that what I've written here is what's going on, but it is a broad stroke of what we see day after day after day, if you choose to sit and watch it day after day after day. Why anybody would is beyond me. There is more to life. I understand this is a crucial election. I'm trying to go back and remember when it wasn't a crucial election. Are we at a precipice where we were in 1860? That if Abe Lincoln is elected, the South is going to split? Well, in this case, it isn't North versus South. There won't be the Mason-Dixon line. The borders are very convoluted and watered. If Trump is reelected, are we going to have a civil war that's going to be fueled by the press? This is what is scary. I mean, I'm also a novice military historian, and I was trying to look at this current political situation in military terms. How would it work out? Well, California is split. The southern part is Democrat. The northern part is Republican. And they're squeezed between Washington and Oregon. But they got Utah off to the east. Now, on a military campaign, how would you do that? Well, look at a map of the United States. Montana, that's conservative. Utah, conservative. Nevada can swing. Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas. There won't be defined battle lines. It's going to start out in counties. Dallas County, where I live, Democratic. Tarrant County to the west, Republican. Collin County, Denton County, Rockwall. They're Republican strongholds. So, do you take Dallas County knocked the government out there. And then if you look at the state of Texas, especially after this last senatorial race between Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz, this state is split. And that line pretty well starts at Austin and goes south. Austin, San Antonio, El Paso, Laredo, Houston, Corpus Christi. These are Democratic strongholds. Does the state of Texas split? Or does the state of Texas go to war? You got Arkansas and Louisiana. They're Republicans. Then you get up into Michigan and Minnesota, Wisconsin. Are there enough conservatives to make a stand? We don't have to go to the Northeast because that is, I don't see that changing. Yeah, Pennsylvania and Ohio flipped in the last election. But is it enough if it comes down to open rebellion? So if you have the time and you have a little military training, or you are solid military or a novice in history, look at a map and see how you draw up a plan. It is not where I want this country to go by any stretch of the imagination. But from these excerpts from the books I wrote in this series, Destination DC and Target Berlin, you see what the press is doing. I want a free press. Make no bones about it. But I want factual news. I don't want opinions. I don't need 12 to 10-minute monologues when they start their show. You know, where's Ed Sullivan? We need to bring Ed Sullivan back. And away we go. We've got a really big show tonight. And that's just damn near what all of these commentators are like. It's a show in a shoe. Of course, they're wearing $500 to $1,000 leather shoes and $2,000 suits. That just pisses me off. We're with you. We are with the American people. We know where you're coming from. Then, I don't have a $4,000 suit in my closet, and why are you wearing one? Your forefathers that set the standard for the news back in the 60s and 70s didn't wear these god-awful expensive suits, yet they did make good money, but they didn't flash it. So that's all it's become. It has become a fashion show of opinions. And of course, all their hair's done right, and their makeup's perfect, and all their fluffy, coiffed hairs, and it just makes me absolutely ill to watch any of them. I guess the only one that I might say wears a plain Jane suit would be Tucker Carlson. But the rest of them, it's like, oh, what do we got to wear today? Oh, what do we got? I don't give two shits. My God, it was like during Katrina when Bush went down to look at the damage and met with the mayor. Bush is wearing his windbreaker and his slacks. And I forgot who the mayor of New Orleans was. And he's got this $3,000 or $4,000 suit on. It's like, you know how stupid you look? Your city is in shambles. Katrina has just wiped out 1,500 miles of coastline, and you're up there looking like you're doing an ad for Brooks Brothers? What the hell was that about? And it wasn't Lando, because I believe that was the senator's name. I'd have to look up the mayor's name of New Orleans back then. But I remember watching that and just going, what a dumbass. What the hell are you thinking? Where was Forrest Gump when you need him? Stupid as a stupid does. Yeah, dumbass. Okay, well, I'm going to get off topic and I'm going to ramble, and I really don't want to do that. But I did want to read these excerpts from my books, and they are all, I have plenty. They're all available on Amazon. The series is Gateway Pioche, Pioche, Destination DC, and Target Berlin. And I hope you enjoyed this. Like and share it. It'll be on YouTube. Tell your friends to follow it on the stations that I mentioned earlier: Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify. And have a good day. I will talk to you again.